What has given these people the permission to think that they know better than science and every single qualified authority on all
This is the result of a media
matters?
that nobody can trust. I still do not know the truth.
But we don't even know how the virus is spread.
A dear friend is in a coma with coronavirus. He's under 40 and was in excellent
condition. I just went to a crowded Red Robin for lunch, and I'm 30. It was delicious. And I took my sweet time eating my meal because this is America,
is an attack
and I
on
will
our
do
rights.
what I want.
Specifically, our right to peacefully assemble is being infringed upon.
I hate how conservatives have turned a global pandemic into their little personal victimization.
We must
tantrum.
absolutely resist any government that runs amok and takes advantage of a crisis. This is how your liberty dies. Stand up, America, and resist.
I'm afraid I have a confession to make of Catholic proportions. I honestly don't know the first thing about playing chess. I suppose I get the gist of it as a metaphor for one's life choices. According to my Netflix binge watch of The Queen's Gambit, most chess pieces can only move up or down the board or sideways without any real sense of ingenuity. But there are exceptions where some can move diagonally and others still can magically gallop around the board in every which way, like horses, which I assume are the pieces that, well, are carved to look like horses. It all makes perfect sense as a strategy for danger avoidance, for survival, if you will. When confronted head-on with an insurmountable obstacle, you find a way to drastically change who and where you are. And so, in response, these carved horses possess the critical skill to pivot, to detour, to radically move out of harm's way. But what about us? How do we survive today when we're surrounded by all sides? When a pandemic's reach is relentlessly encroaching our lives from every direction, quietly oozing into every single nook and cranny of what your normal used to be. So then tell me, what then is your next move? Did you know in George Orwell's 1984, Winston, the main protagonist, is stuck in a totalitarian regime that controls every aspect of social life? What people say and who they say it to, how people spend each and every minute. It's all overseen and well documented by their leaders. And clearly, there are some literary parallels that can be drawn to our present day lives. But that said, even more intriguing to me is his central concept of doublethink. The ability to simultaneously hold on to two contradictory thoughts in your head and yet believe them both to be true at the same time. Call it a mental last resort, a cerebral shift to preserve oneself in a moment of extreme crises. Our collective response as a country to the COVID-19 pandemic and everything socio-political under the sun takes on a larger, much more alarming and cacophonous doublethink, particularly on social media. Constantly at odds and contradicting ourselves at every turn. Masks prevent the spread of the virus versus masks violate our civil liberties. Black Lives Matter versus all lives matter. Vaccination selfies versus disease parties. And systematically defunding the police as a racist institution versus the belief of only a few bad apples. Our incomprehensible, varied views on the historical impact of 8 minutes and 46 seconds. People often like to use the simplified trope of a nation divided to describe us. That civil discourse is down the tubes, that a middle ground must be found. But when white supremacists march with tiki torches in Charlottesville or unkempt, homegrown terrorists storm the Capitol and the President of the United States publicly claims during a press conference, these are very fine people on both sides. Or in a video tweet, go home now, we have to have peace, we love you, you're very special. Well, then our so-called nation divided has now mutated into a perilous mass scale of doublethink, and that should give us all pause as a people. Biologically speaking, every living thing needs warmth from others. Even the biggest and most beastly of us. Wolves travel in packs, orca whales in pods, lions in prides, elephants in parades. Oh, how joyous it must all be. But how do we meaningfully curate our lives and congregate together when we are currently swamped in isolation? The coronavirus has hit us like a Fukushima tsunami, my friends, a near nuclear disaster that has swept us all away from ourselves and each other, changing how we interact with each other on radioactive proportions. I mean, with all of the social distancing recommendations and regulations placed upon us, though medically speaking, completely prudent and practical, we nonetheless pay a price. A pivot has ultimately been forced upon us, for better or worse. Taking on Zoom meetings in your underwear, or Facebook posting of our latest dinner concoctions, juice-filled focaccia with broccolini and squash blossom. Mwah! Really? Puppy pics? Sharing your newfound medical expertise, because apparently we're all now doctors in white coats these days, writing prescriptions of misinformation, conspiracy theories, and outright lies. It seems that for many of us, we've taken to social media to find that middle ground within ourselves, or at least in rock bottom terms, to figure out how to curate our own misery. Ironically, numbers often have a way of naming things that words cannot. Identifying trends from 30,000 feet that a poetic paragraph cannot. For instance, did you know social media platforms have seen a 61% uptick in usage as people try their best these days to stay intimately connected with family, friends, and colleagues? It's true. Tin Can and String, like Facebook and Instagram, have seen a 40% increase from February to March 2020 alone. And communication apps like Messenger and WhatsApp have seen a 70% increase during this period too. Truth be told, research has also shown that how we choose to portray ourselves on social media, it's not really how we see ourselves. Oh no, not really when we're staring in the mirror at 3 a.m. or watching Netflix for so damn long that it actually has the audacity to pause itself and ask, are you still watching? We have mentally become our own overseers at this point, always opting to publicly wear our Sunday bests on social media these days. But why? Is this some sort of virtual survival mode of carving our own horse in the moment? Or are we all just broken timepieces that keep ticking on the same second, as if stuck on an idea of who we wish we were? But don't get it wrong, this COVID-19 pandemic does not put us all in the same boat. According to an Instagram post I most recently read, we're all in the same storm. But some of us have yachts, and others of us have slowly sinking rowboats in need of a plug. And yet, even still, some of us are just drowning. Alone, quietly, with no life preserver in sight. By the end of 1984, Winston is found playing chess by himself in misery. His loneliness has finally taken over all aspects of his life. His abilities to meaningfully interact with others have finally slipped away, and his face plainly shows it. A twisted concoction of every human emotion imaginable. His crow's feet are wrinkles through time, dreams now a million charred, hopes gone up in smoke. He is lost in himself. He has lost who he is. Winston can no longer see his next move, but worse, he can't even see the board. Here's your caveat. When playing chess, after your very first move, there are then over 400 possible new positions, new metaphorical life choices for you to consider. After 2, almost 72,000. After 3, almost 9 million. And after 4, billions. That's right, billions. So then tell me, what then is your next move? Take your time. Think it through.
Thank you for watching this very special episode of Simone Serving. Make sure you like and subscribe because I have new videos coming out every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Until then, stay blessed and stay safe. And that's how the magic happens. Ain't no fancy bells or whistles, just some good old truth telling. Now, since we're making this BTS video, I think I should answer the one question I get asked over and over again. How in the hell did your old ass end up making videos for the YouTube? Well, it wasn't my fault. Y'all can blame Dr. Garcia. I was due for my annual checkup, and I was so paranoid about going out and getting sick that I gave him a call to find out their safety precautions. They told me I didn't even need to come in. We could do the checkup over the computer. They called it telemedicine. Now, I don't know about y'all, but I'm old school. I like seeing my doctor face to face, make sure ain't no alcohol on their breath or some funny business happening. But people are out in the street acting a fool, so I thought, why not? First, I had to get my grandbaby to teach me how to get my computer hooked up. Once I did, I felt like a whole new world opened up. Just so y'all know, technology ain't never been my forte. When I grew up, you had to turn the channel, you had to walk over to the TV and turn the knob. Don't know nothing about no iPod, pad, or whatever they're called. These kids nowadays grow up with these gadgets attached to their bodies 24/7. Walk into any pediatrician's office, and you see all the babies holding some kind of electronics. The only technology you're gonna see me with is my CD player. Spinning a Luther Vandross greatest hit CD. Bum bum, bum bum, dum dum dum. Bum bum. Let me stop messing with y'all. So my grandbaby Lexus told me that I could learn all kinds of tips and tricks off YouTube. Child, that was all I needed. Taught myself all kinds of things. how to make falafel, the best places to travel in Europe, and how to start a YouTube channel. I know some of y'all judge me because I'm old, but I'm more adaptable than you think. So to bring it all back, I called up Dr. Garcia and I told her how I was doing, and she told me that I need to start eating better and find some way to get some exercise during this pandemic. All of those baking videos I've been watching on YouTube are catching up to me, I'll confess. I let it slip that I was eating so much sugar because I was feeling lonely and I needed sweets, gave me something to be excited about. These past 9 months ain't been easy. I miss laughing with my friends after church. My grandson's friend, Sean, died of the COVID. And I couldn't even go to the funeral to see that my baby was okay. Sean wasn't but 13 years old. He had real bad asthma. He was always feeling kind of sick. And on top of that, my friend Shirley is dealing with breast cancer right now. Can I be there for her? No. I tell all this to the doctor and she tells me that I'm depressed. Depressed? Child, when has life not been depressing? She asked me if I had a Facebook and I told her no. My kids never wanted me to join, said I would join and annoy them, commenting on all their posts. She asked me the same question about Instagram, Twitter, and something called TikTok. Once again, I say no. She tells me that social media is a good way to stay in touch with people from a distance and that I should think about joining. I tell her I need to look up how to use this fancy phone my daughter gave me. And she says, the doctor says no. I'll show you myself. She showed me how to use FaceTime, and now I can't stop. I FaceTime my grandbabies, and it feels so good to see their faces. Oh, what I wouldn't do to have them here huddled up in my living room. I ain't seen them since February. Oh, look at that. I already got my first comment. Hey, Simone. Love your positivity. Thank you for being a shining light in these dark times. Boy, ain't that just the sweetest? I gotta give a shout out to my fans all over the world. Taiwan, Morocco, Timbuktu. Y'all make me feel loved, like I'm not so lonely. I guess I'm becoming a bit of an influencer. Before I learned how to use all these things, I thought an influencer was someone who got you hooked on drugs. Turns out it's just someone who gets free shit for posting things on the internet. Only in America. Well, let me put this thing away. I see why my grandkids stare at these screens all day. These gadgets got some kind of mind control. I guess it's because everything's virtual nowadays. You gotta stream to watch a movie, to go to school, to work. You know some people dating over the computer now. Don't even have to meet up no more. What's this world coming to? Now, what was I talking about before my phone vibrated? I get so forgetful these days. Lord, I'm like the old ladies in the movies. Oh, my doctor's appointment. So anyway, a few weeks later, I call up Dr. Garcia, and I tell her that I'm loving being online, but I'm still not feeling too good. I'm feeling kind of anxious and still don't have much to be excited about. I just sit up in the house all day watching CNN until my boo, Chris Cuomo, comes on with his fine ass. Woo! I love me some Italian men. Reminds me of a boyfriend I had in college, Tony. Oh, where was I? So the doctor says that she's seeing some troubling signs, and had I thought about seeing a therapist? A therapist? And when she said that, I had to lean back. What the hell do I have to talk about with a therapist? They ain't gonna tell me nothing I don't know. I don't want people to think I'm helpless, and I damn sure ain't weak. But Dr. Garcia says, your insurance covers it, so you don't have nothing to lose. So I'm on the phone with a therapist when she asks me, what do I want to do in life? What is my goal, my objective? I had to take a moment to think about this. Nobody has asked me something like that before. I don't even think I've asked myself. I think I want to uplift. Make sure the people in my life get through this. I know I'll be fine. I've been washing my hands my whole life. That's how I was brought up. Been using Purells since before it went out of stock. Been wearing a mask my whole life too. Not a physical one, but the mask us black folks have to wear. Ain't nothing new about this for me. The plague changes, but the remedy stays the same. Compassion for one another, shared responsibility, and listening to Dr. Fauci. You see, people think because you're old, you're helpless. Being old isn't hard. It's how society looks at you that's hard. This world is built for young people. Older people like me are meant to be invisible. We walk too slow, or we're too out of touch to be included in the conversation. I didn't come up with technology, but somehow it's my fault that I don't know how to hook up to the Wi-Fi. These young people might be more connected with social media, but they're less connected in real life. I'm not scared of the virus. I'm scared of the people who don't care. I watch TV and I see all these talking heads try to put a dollar amount on the value of my life. They don't care and talk about the actual real people dying. All they want to talk about is the economy and the cost of the shutdown. What about the cost to our humanity? We're all suffering. It's hard for all of us who want to keep on keeping on, because isolation is not a singular thing. I turned 65 this year. 65. Lived longer than most of my family. But did I have a big whoop-de-doo? No. I did the right thing. I stayed home where I know I'm safe, because people out here ain't social distancing no more. They be all up on you. That's why I only go shopping during the special senior shopping hours at the local grocery store. Now the employees be looking at me sideways like I'm too young to be in there at 7 in the morning. A black don't crack, but a damn sure ages like some cognac. Oh snap, my grandbaby's calling me. Y'all getting 2 for the price of 1 today. Hey, sweetie. Well, ain't my video good? Well, ain't that what y'all doing these days, these try-on hauls or whatever they call? I see these young girls trying on their clothes and they get 1 million views off of it. Fine. I hear you. Okay, look, I'll talk to you later. All right? Bye. Don't know what the issue is. They want a granny that stays home all day and knits scarves. Well, that ain't me. I'm gonna live my life. If I wanna strip butt naked and make an OnlyFans, I'll do it. You know what OnlyFans is, don't you? It's the site where people pay to see your nasty photos. This actress, Bella Thorne, I think her name is, made $1 million in a day. Shit, I should be able to make a couple hundred then. Who am I kidding? Ain't nobody gonna be spending no $9.99 a month to see all this. See, my kids never call me unless they want to complain about something. Everybody's stressing me out about their problems, but don't nobody ask me how I'm doing. They never called me this much before, but now they only calling because they feel guilty. They never texted me, but now they want to make sure I'm good. But you know, when all of this is over, they're gonna go right back to the way they used to be. On TikTok all day making videos. But this time, they got some new competition.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to COVID Monologues, this time with HowlRound. Thank you, HowlRound, so much for hosting us this evening. And for viewers, we are thrilled that you've joined us for this conversation. COVID Monologue organizers are on the unceded land of the Piscataway peoples, tended to by the Susquehannock, Lenape, and Lumbee peoples, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. We ask you to join us in acknowledging these people, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We ask that you also acknowledge the communities of unceded land where you reside personally today. This acknowledgement demonstrates a commitment to beginning the process of working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of colonialism. It has been over a year since the first case of community-spread COVID-19 in the United States. Since then, nearly 32 million Americans have been infected, and the virus has changed our society in ways we've never imagined. Before we jump into our discussion, please join us in a moment of silence for the 567,000 Americans and over 3 million people globally who have lost their lives to COVID-19 as of April 20th, 2021. First, we're going to tell you a little bit more about this project and the process for COVID Monologues. We are a group of public health researchers with a love for theater and theater professionals with a love for public health. I'm Genevieve DeMai, and I'm the artistic director of Single Carrot Theater here in Baltimore, Maryland.
I'm Sarania Thamaraja. I'm a theater artist and public health researcher based at Johns Hopkins.
You're muted, Sarania.
You hear me now? Good? Okay. I'm Sarania Thamaraja. I'm a theater artist and public health researcher based at Johns Hopkins. In these challenging times, our goal was to bring artists, researchers, and you together in a deeper shared understanding of the pandemic's impact on society. We started by searching scientific journals and drawing out the main messages of peer-reviewed research on the lived experiences of Americans during COVID-19 and grouping them into distinct topics. We put together a research packet after performing a systematic search of the literature and distributed them at our playwright workshop. Our workshop was conducted with the NYU Verbatim Performance Lab on topics including consuming literature and history of research-based theater and public health, conducting in-depth interviews, and incorporating a call to action. We direct our playwrights to communicate one or more of these messages in a 10-minute monologue. They could use direct quotes, other techniques, but no other specific instructions. We allowed for artistic interpretation. The monologues were then workshopped with public health researchers familiar with the work and then theater professionals. COVID Monologues brings together 35 artists and studies by over 100 public health researchers. We selected 8 playwrights through a competitive application process that was adjudicated by volunteers in the theater field. We tasked the selected playwrights with writing monologues based on this research. We then gathered 5 theater companies based in Baltimore, Maryland, including Single Carrot Theater, Two Strikes Theater Collective, Arena Players Inc., the Strand Theater Company, and Fells Point Corner Theater. We matched playwrights with theaters and then tasked the theaters with selecting their artistic teams, workshopping the script with the playwright and mounting these pieces to be filmed. COVID Monologues is a unique intersection of scientific research and art, and an experiment in whether these disparate industries can work together to build communities and share knowledge and information. This project was made possible by the Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund, sponsored by the U.S. Department of State's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and implemented in partnership with the Partners of the Americas. Please go to covidmonologues.com to learn more about this project, watch, and share all of the videos, and also connect with community organizations. In the spirit of research, we encourage you to please complete the post-performance survey by scanning the QR code on your screen with your phone camera, or by going to covidmonologues.com and following the survey link. Today, you have seen 2 of the 8 monologues, How to Be a Carved Horse by Sean Reddy, directed by Genevieve, and produced by Single Carrot Theater, and I'm Old School by Reynaldo Pinilla, directed by Marie Travis, and produced by Arena Players. Artists, please introduce yourselves and tell us about yourself in a sentence or 2.
Who do you want to start?
Go ahead, Sean.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Sean. I just wanted to say, I love Ronaldo's piece, and I think he's like a new voice. But for me, so much is about being an educator in Chicago. I am from Chicago. I taught on the south side of Chicago. If you've been following the news recently, you'll see about a young 13-year-old that has recently been shot by police. And this is something that we continually struggle with. So within the dimensions of COVID, we're still dealing with this level of stress that doesn't go away with George Floyd, because what I try to really work with are systems of oppression. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm not going to get into it because I'll get on my soapbox, but that's where it's at. And that's something that I'm really concerned with. It's really bothering me.
Well, first, I want to say I'm Reynaldo. And second, I want to thank Sean for the love he gave me and also for the work he's doing in Chicago right now. I can't imagine what that's like to still be doing that at this moment in our history, that moment in that city in particular. So I want to give you your kudos and flowers, and I'll continue to shower you with love over the course of this evening. But about my own work, I'm an actor, playwright, educator, and activist based in New York, New York. I'm the current artist in residence at the Classical Theater of Harlem. I'm a current advocacy fellow with the National Association of Latino Arts and Cultures, and I'm a faculty member at the American Musical and Dramatic Academy.
Wonderful. Thank you both for joining us. And sorry, I had some technical difficulties, which is why I vanished for a second. And now I'm back to hopefully continue this conversation, knock on wood. So playwrights, I would love to hear from you about, with this process of COVID monologues, you were given a handful of public health academic research articles, and then we're tasked with writing a monologue on a particular theme. So I'd just be curious, how did that how did this alter your process? What did you learn about how you work? What challenged you? And were there moments that were enriching to your process?
I'll jump in first, Sean. I will say my process pre-COVID had nothing to do with science. I was not looking at numbers. I was not looking at data. My sparks of inspiration came from the world, came from being out as a person in New York City and meeting people. And I found myself during the pandemic not creating because all of that stimuli was just not a part of my life anymore. So with this project, it forced me to work in a new way. And I didn't quite know how I would translate these raw numbers into a human experience. And it wasn't until I had a conversation with the staff at Arena Players. For those who don't know, Arena Players is the oldest continually performing African-American community theater in America. And that phrase community theater means a lot to me because I always want my work to be in conversation with community, to be serving them in a positive, healing way. And when I was talking to Donald Owens, their artistic director, he was talking a lot about his personal struggles as an older Black man during COVID, the regimen that he had to put in place, dealing with technology. And suddenly these raw numbers and figures had a face to it. The data about depression, older people dealing with depression, the data about older Americans not having internet connections or access to a computer. And I found myself suddenly putting pieces of a puzzle together. And I made the conscious decision to make it an elderly Black woman because I feel like so much of the discourse around Black Lives Matter has been focused on the men. And rightly so, I'm a Black man and we've been disproportionately affected by police violence. But at the same time, Black women have been the backbone of America for the longest. We just saw in the past election, we had the role that Black women played in electing Joe Biden. So I wanted to use my monologue as a way to elevate their stories and all of the work they've been doing pre-pandemic and during the pandemic.
What about you, Sean?
Yeah. Just to hitch my wagon onto Ronaldo, like I thought everything he said was beautiful. You know, my father came from India. He's 82 right now. My mother is 71 and has been in the ICU for the 3 times in the last year. I haven't seen them in 14 months. You know, so like for me, really having an opportunity to read research that is qualitative research and about numbers, but not necessarily about people, and then having the opportunity to make it real meant something for me. Like this was an important project for me because it allowed me to really think about myself and like, God, I got to get back and I got to see my parents and like, I just don't want to miss out anymore. And I think we've all been missing out so much in the last year. My son just went back yesterday for the first day in 14 months to school, and dropping him off, he was like, I'm nervous. An 11-year-old saying you're nervous creates problems, right? So like when we're talking about a new normal, there's no such thing. Like we have to construct a new normal moving forward. But like it has been a real process, but having the opportunity to engage in this project where I'm trying to construct a narrative based off of qualitative science studies has been really grateful. So like, I really appreciate it.
Serenia, I'd love for you to talk a little bit, since most of the people watching are in the theater industry, if you could talk a little bit about what the typical life of public health research is, who consumes it, what's its impact, and what you feel like this project in partnership with COVID Monologues, partnering theater artists with public health researchers does differently.
Yeah, sure. So typically the life of public health research is that it's published in public health journals, and I think it's important to think about public health, and I think hopefully the pandemic has altered the way that people think about public health, that it can really range from maybe really the microbiology part of something, but then also the social behavioral aspects of public health. And all these topics can be published in public health academic journals, and they can be used for various different policy practices. There are future implications for further public health research. But I think something that I'm really interested in is how this research is being communicated, particularly in health communications. And my specific interest is how we can use health communication to reduce racial and ethnic health disparities. So the hope of this project was using theater and as a mode of communication to really transform these quantitative, qualitative pieces of public health research and make them more consumable.
So I'd be really curious for everyone, with this project, because we do have this significant public health component. The public health half of this project put out an audience survey, which we mentioned earlier, that we'd love for you to continue filling out. And it provides this really unique opportunity that we as theater artists don't typically have, where a bunch of people who see this piece of theater fill out a survey and give feedback on it in a very data-driven way. As theater artists, I feel like we usually just cross our fingers and hope somebody likes it, and maybe somebody will come to us after the show and be like, oh, that was so amazing, that really impacted me. But tickets will sell well, tickets will sell less well with different projects, but we don't really know these inner thoughts of what people are thinking and feeling and what that work inspires. So I'd be curious on both sides about just this idea of data. It's such a unique opportunity as theater artists to have this data from the work we're putting out there. And, is it possible to measure or quantify somebody's artistic experience? And what does that data tell us, and what does it not tell us? I know, that was a million complicated questions.
Well, I can talk a little bit about the evaluation itself, that I urge anyone viewing to go to covidmonologues.com and take the survey. And we've been having some results that have coming in, preliminary results. And we're also doing interviews. We're also doing qualitative interviews with the artists and the researchers to see how we could improve the process and maybe get more support and evidence that this is a valuable way to communicate health information and partner with community theaters and really get this information that really is not too accessible by others into the hands of usually how this research is being done on these people that don't usually get a chance to access it, whether that's a paywall, whether that's health literacy. To answer your question, it certainly is difficult to quantify people's reactions to theater or art, but I hope that with this paper that we hope to publish, we will get more support. And I think the data is showing overwhelming support for doing performances like this that not only communicate research but build resiliency during these times, fund artists. That was a really big part of this project. As we mentioned, the grant came from the Citizen Diplomacy Action Fund, and Emily and I, who is a co-creator, she and I wanted to really give the funds to theaters right now and artists in a time where theater was really struggling, and that was a big intent of this project as well.
I would also like to chime in just saying that I feel like theater is a great pathway in terms of allowing us all to have an ability to create more interesting dialogue I feel like within our systems right now, it's so dichotomous where it's just like there's a right or there's a wrong, there's a right or there's a left. And within this, we're actually creating pieces within this to have people have discussions. And for me, uh, that just feels like being in such a detrimental time period right now in American society, like that feels really pertinent. Like having the ability to just take a pause, don't respond, just listen, and then let's discuss. Like, to me, that seems so pertinent because we're so reactionary right now as a society, and that is unfortunate, you know. So, okay, I'm going to stop there. But yeah.
Yeah, to jump in, when I went through my theater training, I heard the phrase, if you can change one person's heart or mind, you were a success. You had a good show, right? And then suddenly I have this data that show that people responded to our monologues, right? So I actually did what I trained to do. Amazing, right? For me, my topic for this project was older adults, right? And the word resiliency was brought up in this discussion already. And that's what I wanted to show, the resiliency of older adults during the pandemic. Because so often in the media or in the real world, it was, well, older people are dying of this disease. If you're young, you're fine. They kind of just felt like the death of old people was a necessary evil for us to get to the point where we can have herd immunity. And I was like, that is crazy. That is insane. And I knew with this project, we would have younger people, student audiences that would take in the work. And that's what I wanted to show them, that yes, you might think of grandma as the most vulnerable, but at the same time, she's lived through so much already. She will find a way through this. And I wanted to show older people that you're not alone in what you feel right now. It's okay to feel lonely. It's okay to feel disconnected. So with the data, it was helpful to know that at least some people responded to that. Whether or not they liked it is beyond me, because that's not why I wrote it. I wrote it to hopefully like connect with someone in some way. And it seems like we did.
Yeah, I will say it was fascinating to just like be handed this data and be like, oh, you just have people somehow you can ask people to fill out a survey online and then enough people will do it and then you have all this information about their experience, which I think is so interesting, hearing things they liked, they didn't like, things that impacted them, things that resonated with them. It's like such a unique opportunity. And I think, you know, when we are in person doing live theater, you know, we can have post-show discussions and things like that, but we're not really getting at like the same kind of information that you do when people are filling out a survey on their own and they feel kind of at liberty to share, you know, share in a different way. So it's just, I think it was just really interesting and you know, makes me wonder, like, is there a way, either in a data-driven way or in a different way, that we can develop relationships with our audiences, with our communities, to have a deeper dialogue? Because that's, you know.
I think that's such a good question, Genevieve. I'm wondering though, like, do other systems need to be in play first before we get to theater? You know, like we're talking about like systemic levels of oppression. So it's like theater is on the back end when I'm thinking about like education, when I'm thinking about like opportunities in marginalized communities and resources. So like, how do we build that collectively? And how can theater help do that? Like you're saying, I'm not saying that what you're saying is wrong. It's just like, when I think about it all from Chicago, like it's a very complicated space because it's lots of neighborhoods. It's lots of ethnicities, lots of races, and lots of racism that has gone on for years and years and years. So it's just like, how do we combat it all at the same time? And how can theater, like, I love the question that you posited, how can theater be used as a tool to move society forward? But I'm just scared that, like, it's not strong enough unless we're doing all the other things too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, totally. I think it's, as somebody who believes, well, I was going to say, as somebody who believes that theater can make change, I also think theater can't make change. And that, living in that contradiction is something I struggle with all the time, where like I want theater to be something that can change the world. I'm going to pivot into another question, which is, I think both as artists and as theater artists and as public health researchers, both artists and public health researchers want to have impact and to make change and to change lives for the better. And we're coming at it from like completely opposite directions. So I'm kind of curious in that what shortcomings there are in the theater world, which we could spend, 3 hours talking just about systemic problems in the theater industry. So I want to acknowledge that and also not go too deep into that. But like just looking at these two industries that have partnered on this project, what are the shortcomings in both of those industries, and what can we learn from partnerships like this in terms of what public health has to offer or scientific research has to offer and what artistic work has to offer to come together to make some sort of greater impact, hopefully. Or maybe it can't. I don't know.
Well, as an arts educator, I hate that we consider science and art to be two separate, not connected things at all. Earlier today, I had virtual meetings with the staff of Congresswoman Velasquez and Congressman Nadler about how we can integrate arts education and arts funding into the bills to rebuild our schools and reopen them, because there's so much focus on the STEM programs, right? But I'm interested in STEAM, where the A is arts and it's integrated and is considered essential. And I think if we can unify those subjects in our schools, I think those partnerships will then naturally lend themselves to the theater industry.
You know what? To hitch my star onto Ronaldo's wagon, I completely agree. Like, when we talk about education and arts, Genevieve, and you're explaining something so true, but Ronaldo made a good point. There's not a distinction between science and art. Like, at the very creation of art and science, it's about observation, and it's about inquisitiveness, and it's about inquiry. So it's like, how are we investigating and teaching children on a level to do that work? And if you look at new like national art standards and national science standards and national social science standards, they're all inquiry based. And that's for a reason. It's to make it student-centered. And that's really where we need to go. And I think this COVID Monologues project really kind of like brought it together for like adults. It was like adult learning. It was like, so this is what kids are doing, but this is what adults need to know too, because I don't think many adults really know what's going on with education. They're just like, people are teaching my kids, but like, we don't know how they're doing it. This is how it should be done. It should be inquiry based, and it should be collaborating between arts, science, and social science and civic engagement.
Yeah, I mean, I think I totally agree. And when you get to like, I think it's a really interesting point that you're starting from the same place. And then it's really the medium that you're using to tell the story and the method that you're using to tell the story is different, where one is bringing in, both are telling stories, but one is telling a data-driven story and one is telling a human-driven story. I'd be curious, Serenia, in the public health realm, you know, just if you could talk a little bit about, you know, where there is potential for art to tell a different story or tell the same story from a different angle, for projects like this, you know, in the future. What do you think that would mean in the public health sphere, or what impact could that have in the public health sphere if we're really going to like dream big and imagine a society where arts and sciences are one?
Yeah. Yeah, well, COVID Monologues is probably the biggest research-based theater project that I've worked on, and the biggest collaboration effort from all these different playwrights, all these different theaters, artists, videographers. But in the past, I've worked on a one-woman show when I did my own research, and used my interviews to create that. And then I also worked with a script with Emily on sexual assault research, in a public health realm. And then my one-woman show was on forced migration. So really, this art form, research-based theater, can be tailored to any public health problem. The idea of me wanting to work with artists and funding artists during this time and working with researchers had always kind of been there, but this funding opportunity was for COVID at the time. So that's why it was COVID Monologues. But this could be opioid monologues. It could be obesity monologues, right? Like you could do the same model for any public health problem. And that is what I hope to do, continue working with artists, with community leaders. I think we talked a little bit about, Ronaldo brought up working with a community theater, and in public health, we talk a lot about the importance of working with community leaders. And that conversation is really about church leaders, community organization leaders. But I think a lot of times we're not talking about arts organizations. And I see theaters as being a really big infrastructure in the community. And it was a really big part of mine to work with Black theaters and Asian theaters initially, to put forth this project. And so that would be communicated with audiences. And I also just think it is important to acknowledge how white theater is, and how the audiences that tend to go to plays, musicals, tend to be white. So I think the interesting about COVID Monologues was that because of COVID, it had to be filmed and it had to be streamed, and thinking maybe about that mode in the future so that we can make this more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'd be curious from everyone, just in a dream big final question, is what ingredients do you feel like, when Sean, when you were talking about uniting art, activism, and science, what would the other ingredients be that would be needed for that to really have a broader or more significant impact if those entities were in partnership with one another? I mean, arts and activism partners a lot, science and activism partners a lot, but we don't see this like trifecta of partnership. And anybody can answer that question.
Yeah, Ronaldo, get on this. That's a tough question, Genevieve.
But like, what ingredients are missing? I mean, I think that, you know, we've talked about, you know, there's this question of like who's at the table in terms of creating this research, in terms of the lens of the research, or the art or the activism.
I appreciate that question very much. I think it's very complicated question. I used to be a playwright solely when I was younger. I'm not, though, now. Like, that's a side job. I am an educator, and I work as a diversity, equity, and inclusion manager for a lot of corporations, you know, and the question that you're asking is the same question that I ask all of these corporations. Diversity is a numbers game. Inclusion is different. Inclusion is all about belonging. So it's like, how are we creating a culture and a community where everybody can come together and feel that they are bringing their best selves, their individuality, their identity to anything that they're coming to in their work and contributing. And basically, I feel like that's what your question is. And I think it's a beautiful question. I just don't know if there's like a concrete answer to that. That's something that I grapple with every day, because I feel like we really need to be transparent and open about systems and systematic oppression. And it's happening every day. I don't care about the verdict of this trial. It means nothing to me. With George Floyd today, even though the cop was, you know, charged on 3 counts, what's changing? What's changing today? And like, so like, you're asking a really beautiful question, like, how can art do that? And I love that. I don't know. Like, I don't even know if I believe that art can do that, because that's something that I try to constantly struggle with, because, you know, living in Chicago and working as an educator in Chicago, it's just tough, man. And I'm being honest, like, but I want to believe that art has a place in there. And I really love that Single Carrot has just been able to shapeshift so much in the last year and figure out how to be meaningful in this moment theatrically and dramatically. And I think you guys have done a great job with it. Like, I love every one of these COVID monologues, you know, like, they're amazing. And that's because you guys had the vision to put it together, you know? But I think, like, how do we educate the public in a way where it's like, COVID-19 is not our biggest issue right now in America. It's race and equity. I mean, that's the big issue. But COVID-19 gets the front runner line, but that's not okay. And so, like, that's something that I struggle with every day. Jumping off my soapbox.
I was going to ask Ronaldo if you felt any more, I guess, optimistic about the a trifecta partnership and its potential, science, activism, and art, as we'll coin it.
I will say, when I found out this project received funding from the government during the Trump administration, I was like, what mojo do they have to make this happen, right? And Sean is talking a lot about systems, right? And these systems are built on money. Who gets the money? What are the organizations that get looked at as prestigious? Typically the white organizations that are that have better funding, right? And working with Arena Players, which has been around, you know, longer than any other community theater, but at the same time is struggling to survive. So I feel like when the funding situation gets more equitable, that's when the real partnership and the real work will happen.
100.
Yeah. I totally felt, I was like, wow, the State Department's giving out COVID money. Okay. Which is just funny. I mean, I do wonder, it was, you know, it's through the State Department, and Sarah, Nia, and Emily had access to that funding, being Fulbright alums. And I was in the back of my mind too, I was like, maybe this is just flying under the radar, and like Trump just doesn't care about Fulbright alums and like isn't noticing where this money is going. Serenia, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I mean, I'm just really grateful for the artists that we've gotten to work with and that have really put forth their best efforts and work during this time to produce such great work.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. And again, at this conversation, you only saw 2 of the monologues. We did another event with HowlRound last week, so you can see 2 other monologues and another artist discussion if you like. And you can also go to covidmonologues.com and see all of the monologues if you really want to dive in and just watch all of it. So thank you, HowlRound. Thank you, our captioners, for captioning this event for the hearing impaired. And we will see you all again hopefully soon. Thank you.